Well, I'm going to say we'll go ahead and get started. We've given a few minutes for people to wander around. It's not like this convention space is that big for people that their feet might hurt. So, but we'll go ahead and jump in. My talk today is not your cup of tea, or how to avoid the desire to please everybody. So you're going to notice in this talk, I am going to talk about tea a lot. And I'm going to tell you about my tea shop. But spoiler alert, it's not actually about tea. It's a metaphor for games. So bear with me. If you're afraid I'm not talking about games and you came to a game conference and you're like, she's talking about tea, I'm getting there. Give me a minute. All right. Okay. So I decided that I wanted to open a tea shop. Why? Because I really love, why did you move? Okay. I really love a good cup of tea. And I feel that other people might actually appreciate a bespoke tea experience. Something they can't just get in your standard store-bought tea bag. Nothing wrong with standard store-bought tea bags. They're great. They serve their purpose, but I'm looking for something that's very specific. I want to be able to sit in a place, know that every leaf that went into my cup was handpicked by somebody who really knows the way I want my brew done. Right. So I decided that I created this because I know a few people who also have expressed to me that they would also really love to have a handcrafted cup of tea. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and create this shop. And in my shop, I have a number of tea leaf mixtures, but it's very specific to 5 or 6 that I know that we can source all the exact products that we want, that I have staff that's expert in finding the specific leaves and knows all the nuances and tastes that each one has. And we want to be able to expose people to flavors that they may have never been exposed to before, like cocoa mint that has actual cocoa nubs in it, and fresh mint that we hand grew in our gardens out back. Maybe we want to introduce them to yuzu citron, or the magic of pea flower, which turns from blue to purple as soon as you add a little bit of citrus to it. And I happen to have met some people with a lot of experience in these specific tea blends and brewing that perfect cup. And I want to create a place where people can experience these flavors. And people can get tea from a number of different places, but what we want to focus on is this high quality and the ability to customize your brewing technique to your individual taste. So I go ahead and I open this tea shop with all of these things. And as soon as we open something, we put something out in the world, we'll get a response. So some people really love our custom tea. Right? We're starting to get a flow of regular business. And we've got those people who really enjoy that specific brew that we're giving them. But we've got a bit of a mixed reception, right? Some people are so happy to finally get that well-crafted cup of tea specific to their desires. But for some people, the prices are just too high, or we don't serve what they have come to expect a tea shop to serve. Or we don't create the community that builds around the community that is built around our shop isn't necessarily the community that they're used to interacting with, or that community doesn't interact in a way that they specifically want to interact. And so what we're finding is that there's different options in, and also community sometimes interacts in ways that are not necessarily part of our service, but are tangential to it. And we'll have some responses to that. So for example, right, we have a number of people who have come in and they really enjoy the way that we create our yuzu citron tea. They really enjoy it. They've told all their friends about it. This is the only place they can get it, and they're excited. So they notice that there's a number of tables sitting right outside our shop on the pathways outside, and they're like, hey, do you mind if we hang out at those tables to drink our tea? And I'm like, of course not. Please, by all means, sit out on those tables, enjoy your tea. This is a good thing for both of us, right? They're showing how much they love our tea, They're getting to enjoy it because they're sitting right there. They come back in frequently for more tea. It works. Oh, it's a win-win, right? While they're sitting and enjoying that tea, at one point they decide somebody brings in some cookies that they grabbed from a shop like a couple doors down, or maybe they made it home and they brought in. And they're like, do you mind if we eat these cookies while we're sitting at those tables outside with your tea? So it's a great pairing. I don't mind at all, right? Please, by all means, enjoy whatever things that add to your experience. Until one day we have a customer that comes by, sees the people outside at the tables enjoying our teas and their cookies, and they come inside and they're like, I noticed there's people outside your door eating cookies. Yes, there are people outside our doors eating cookies. Well, I do not like cookies, and I don't agree with cookie eating with tea. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to eat cookies with the tea. In fact, we don't even sell cookies, right? We just sell tea, and we're still happy to sell you the tea that we serve. But this person is upset that the experience that's happening just outside our doors in our community does not match with what their tea drinking experience should be. And so we start having to think, is this a thing that we need to change or fix about our tea shop? So we have that, right? We also have pricing. We have some people that come in and they see our cups of tea and they say, those teas sound wonderful, but I don't want to pay, $10 for a cup of tea when I can buy a box of tea at the store for less than $10. That's valid, right? They're seeing a value proposition that's different for them. Now, we can explain to them, we handpick our tea leaves. We personally brew that tea for you. We've created this environment and this space in which you will enjoy your tea more, or at least we've set it up in a way that we enjoy our tea more, and many of our customers do. And so we're hoping that they're also getting that experience out of that. And that's why our pricing is where it's at. It is not the same experience as a bag tea that you get in a box down at the Stop and Shop, right? It's a different experience, and thus the value proposition is going to be different. Should we now change our prices though? Because we've had people come in and tell us that they don't want to pay that price for our teas. That's a question and a thing for us to consider, right? Another thing we might look at is that some people come in and they see that we have our 6 different brews of tea and they say, well, you don't have lemon chamomile on here. And I only enjoy lemon chamomile tea. This is also valid feedback, right? We should consider, why don't we have lemon chamomile? Well, it might be because we haven't been able to source the proper leaves and herbs and flowers for a proper lemon chamomile brew that we're happy with. And it might be that it just doesn't match the aesthetic that we're going for and the specific style of tea that we're wanting to serve. But it's good to hear from a customer that that is something that they want, right? But if we don't have that lemon chamomile, they tell us that they will go somewhere else for their tea. So it's a thing for us to think about and consider. So there comes the question. Which of these customers do you listen to? Our feedback for our tea shop was conflicting, right? Some of the changes that some of our customers were asking for would satisfy them, but would dissatisfy other customers. If we swapped out our expensive tea brews for bag tea to bring the prices down, that would upset the customers who came specifically for those custom brews, right? If we told the people outside at the patio tables to not eat cookies because some customers don't like seeing cookie eating while they're coming into our shop, then that would dissatisfy those customers who were sitting out of our shop eating their cookies. So how do you weigh which of these customers to listen to? What aspect of that feedback is something that we would follow. So the first thing that you need to think about is which of those customers are actually in alignment with the vision that you had for your tea shop going in, right? What did we think about when we wanted to set up this tea shop in the first place? Are we getting positive feedback from people who enjoyed that experience that we created to begin with? And would any of these requests for changes change that vision in any way? That's something we really need to contemplate, because when it comes down to it, what you want to do is support your own vision. Hold to that vision, because those customers that are coming in for that experience can only get that experience from you. The next thing to think about is that sometimes those feedback some bits of that feedback you get back are actually within your realm of control, right? And maybe they are slight adjustments that you could make that wouldn't change your vision. So let's think about the customers that came in and said, I'm glad you made this custom tea shop, but my favorite tea is lemon chamomile, and I want to come and enjoy lemon chamomile here. Well, if I can find the lemon chamomile brew that will live up to the vision that I have for this tea shop, maybe it benefits me to add that to the menu, right? Perhaps that isn't a difficult thing for me to add, and it doesn't change what I'm actually providing to the customers that really enjoy my shop, right? Now they've got one more option that was brought in, and that they might enjoy that option also. But if it turns out I can't find lemon chamomile in anything but a bag, maybe in that case, that isn't a thing I want to add to my menu, because that changes my vision, right? And that comes to that third point, right, that I put on there. Will acting on this feedback change the core foundation of your product? You've created a product with a very specific purpose and core in mind. And when feedback comes in from customers that starts to change that foundation, you want to question whether or not it's worth that, right? And it might be that you've created the wrong product. If you can't find a market at all, if there's nobody there or not enough people there to actually support, financially that shop staying open, then perhaps you do need to reconsider, right? What is the actual vision of your shop, of your product? But if you already have a customer base, right, then maybe some of these changes don't be made. The question is, do you want that to change? You as the creator, you as the person who decided to put the blood, sweat, and tears into this tea shop to create a specific experience, does that change sit right with you? Does it fit your vision? If so, then consider it. If it doesn't, it's okay to say goodbye. So what we're going to do is focus on the happiest customer first. That's who's going to tell you what is worth your time to change and what is not. So one of the things that we want to remember in this is that I'm sure many of you have heard, the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. I want you to think about, what if that squeaky wheel is squeaking because it just doesn't fit the machine? It is not always best to go straight to the loudest people, because sometimes the loudest people are not actually your best customers. Sometimes they're loud because they're expressing that they have a need that your product is not fulfilling, but it might be because it's not your product and it's a different product that they need. And so if you have the ability to create a second shop that meets the need of those customers, then awesome, do that. But don't necessarily change the shop and the product that you have right now just because you're hearing the loudest people complain. So how do we know which of the people who are complaining, if they are good customers or if they are simply a gear that doesn't fit in this machine. Check your data. So you should be keeping track, right? As a tea shop owner, I have sales data. I can go back in all my sales data and I can see all those credit card receipts. And I'm going to check and I'm going to see who comes in here most often. Who are the people hanging out on the chairs outside my building and waving at people to come on in and have a cup of tea, right? Who are the people who come in and order their cups of tea? They're in here every single day. They never say a single thing to any of our workers there. They're very quiet people, right? But they come in every single day. They take their tea and they leave. If we look at the data, we find out that those people actually spent the most money with our shop. Those people are happy, even if they're not coming to you directly and telling you that they're happy. They're showing you that they're happy by always showing up, by always buying your latest brew, right? So look at those people and see what it is that they're enjoying and lean into that, especially if what they're enjoying is in alignment with your vision. When you do this, what happens is they become your best marketing. The best marketing is always known as word of mouth marketing. It is the cheapest. It is also the most effective for long-term retention. People will go to their friends and family and say, hey, what place do you recommend to go get dinner tonight? They are more likely to go with that suggestion and stick with that suggestion as a favorite than they are on Yelp reviews, Google reviews, whatever. That's a bunch of strangers who don't know who they are in their particular tastes, but their friends and family know who they are and their particular tastes. So if you have customers that are loyal customers coming back super happy, focus on them and continuing to make them happy, because they're going to spread that happiness to other people, which means that they multiply your work effort instead of detracting from it. This is something that I highly recommend, not only in customers, but also in employees, right? Is someone always a plus and add to your team or your product? Or are they always a negative? If they're detracting, if they're causing more and more work with little return, then they might not be the best people to continue working with or to continue serving, right? In that case, it might not be their cup of tea that you are serving. And that's okay. There are other tea shops in the world. You want to focus on the people who this is very much their cup of tea and keep serving them. And how do we do that? We do that by defining our boundaries. As creators, we would love to have control over everything that is said about our product, what spins out from it. But the truth is you can't. You need to define what your actual sphere of influence is. So let's take an example of our shop. Our actual sphere of influence of our shop is the shop itself. Within the doors, I control everything that happens inside of it, right? That is my environment to set up. I decorate it. I set the prices. I decide what the tea brews are. I know what times we're available. I know what staffing is on, what staffing isn't, right? I set the music. I set the tone. I have full control inside my shop to make it the experience that I want to make it. Now, as soon as I step outside of the doors to my shop, I'm in what I consider the community. So if you look in that picture, right, the shop is inside our doors, and outside where those tables are, that's our community. We have some influence over our community. Most communities are going to grow up around people who really enjoy your product and its idea, right? Maybe not every aspect of it, but there's something about your product and idea that drew them to you and is getting them to draw their other friends in as well, right? And so you have a little bit of influence there. Those people are willing to talk to you. If you go out and you say, hey, folks, I'm glad that you brought your cookies in and everything, but can you make sure that you clean up the tables afterwards? Right? You can have a conversation with them about that. And they might listen to that and they might be like, oh yeah, we realized all the pigeons were coming out here and that was destroying our experience. So maybe we should make sure the cookie crumbs are cleaned up before we leave, right? That's great. You can have that conversation. You can express to them that there might be certain things about the community. And maybe you are actually own the tables and chairs that are outside of your community, right? So maybe you own the forums, right? Or the Discord or whatever, and you can have some direct control over it, but you don't have direct control over the people who are coming in and out of it. Because at this point, you're out there in the world, in the metaverse, right? That is not my direct control, but I have some influence. So spend a little bit of time influencing that space. And it's okay to spend some time there. But then there's the cat. See that cat lounging back there? That cat's going to wander in. That cat's going to try to come in your shop. Whether or not you let that cat in your shop is up to you. But I will warn you that cat's going to cause havoc. Most likely. I don't know. Could be a friendly cat. Could be a great teacup. You don't know. But it might be a bad idea too. You never know. The cat you have no control over. The cat is going to wander through your community. The cat is going to wander through your shop. And it's up to you to define how far you're going to let that cat go. Because when it comes down to it, you have zero control. So, what do we do when we have to let the rest go? What do we do when we find it the cat is jumping on top of our counters and throwing our teas around? What do we do when that customer who keeps coming back and insisting that our prices are too high and that they can get tea bags elsewhere? What do we do for them? We say, this is not for you. Sometimes it's simply better to say goodbye than spin your wheels trying to please someone who doesn't really want what you had to offer in the first place. They're complaining because you didn't give them what they wanted, but you never had it and you were never offering it. So it's okay to say, I'm glad you want that thing. I'm not making it. Maybe you can even be kind and direct them to a tea shop down the street that gives them exactly what they want, but that is also not your responsibility. You can say, this is not your cup of tea, and that's all right. Some people might have come thinking because it was close to what they wanted, but at the core, it simply wasn't, right? They liked Lipton tea, so they thought it might be like yours, but then they found out that you were too expensive and it was too unfamiliar with their taste buds. And that's okay. Lipton tea still exists. There are plenty of places they can get that. Turns out they're simply not your market. So let them go. There is sometimes value in these customers. What's great about the customers who are even the naysayers is that sometimes they can point out flaws in how you're marketing your product. So maybe you were not clear enough in your marketing that you were a custom brew tea house and that there was no lemon chamomile to be found. Or that your prices are a bespoke price. Maybe your marketing didn't quite express that enough. And so that might be a place that you want to adjust so that you make sure you're bringing more of your core market versus these other people who are on the periphery who thought they might want what you have, but didn't quite know what you have, right? So if you're not clear enough, that is something to express. But at the end of the day, I want you to stay true to your vision. And you do that by one, defining your core vision. What is it that you are specifically setting out to do with this product, with this tea shop? Then define the boundaries that you have of control around that. Where is your shop? What is the shop that you have complete control over? What is the patio outside of your shop, your community? And how much control are you going to have over that community? Define that. And then stick to it. Stick to your vision and focus on the market that is getting that vision, that is happy about what you have created for them. And then double down on it. So hold on. Where are the games? You said you were going to talk about games. All I heard was about tea and tea shops. What does this have to do with games? I'll give you a couple of examples. when I worked on Lord of the Rings Online, for anybody who doesn't know, the point of Lord of the Rings Online or haven't played Lord of the Rings Online is the entire point of that game is to create an immersive world online that has regular updates in which you get to live in Tolkien's world as a hobbit or a man or an elf or whatever. We have many different ways, right, for you to live in that world. But at the core, right, things that we needed to set up is that we're creating a living immersive world that has regular updates. We know that. We're going to stay true to that IP while still giving some player agency. But staying true to that IP is a very important boundary, right? A very important vision set that we have to hold on to. We also know that we are going to be a free-to-play microtransaction game with subscriptions. That vision, those tenets are going to define what is okay for us and what is not okay for us to change about that product. We have some boundaries around that, right? What are our boundaries? We're going to be an online world. We're not going to be able to create anything for you outside of this online world. But one of the other boundaries that we do know we have is that we have professional community management. So we do have more control over our community than somebody who might not have professional community management. So when you have official moderated boards, Discord servers, etc., you can have a little more influence on that community space and make sure that the people who are in that space are staying true to your vision. And for those people who are not, right, if they come in and they cause a lot of havoc, etc., you can ban them. Welcome them to go find another cup of tea elsewhere, right? If you came into Lord of the Rings Online and you told me, this is a great game, but I want more dragons, I'd be like, there's only one dragon in this world, right? Because we have to stick to the IP. We can't just give everybody little pet dragons. That's not a thing that happens in Tolkien's world. We already defined that. If you want a game that has pet dragons, there are other games that have that, but it's not going to be this one, right? If you're like, come into my game that is Lord of the Rings Online, and you're like, this game is fun, but I don't like hobbits. I want you to write a script where hobbits disappear. Well, I'm not going to write a script where hobbits disappear, right? There's a core aspect of this game is that hobbits are there, right? And so what did we do in Lord of the Rings? So one of the things that we did to turn around Lord of the Rings many years ago when I came on was that we really focused in, we went and looked at the players who were happiest playing Lord of the Rings Online. These are the people who are playing all the time, logging in regularly, would buy every update, every expansion, right? They didn't necessarily always tell us how happy they were, but we could look at the data and we could see that they were constantly supporting us and constantly online. And one of the things I looked at was that these people bought every single cosmetic outfit that would hit the market, but we weren't making extra ones for them. Why weren't we making extra ones for them? These people were super excited about having new outfits. We could create new outfits for them. It would not harm our vision. It would make them happier, and they would stick with us longer. So instead of doubling down on players who were asking for more like PvP content, right? That wasn't quite in line. There was some PvP in Lord of the Rings. In like a specific like monster versus player space. We had players who were like, pay more attention to this over here. And we had players who were like, pay more attention to giving me new dresses, right? We had to look at the data and say, who's actually the happier player? Who actually enjoys the core of what Lord of the Rings Online is? And we went with the people who wanted more dresses. And that was a win, right? For the people who wanted more PvP content, this was not the game for them, right? There are other games that do that, and that is their core vision. And so we welcome them to say, this is not your cup of tea. There's other cups of tea for you. Right? Another example, my latest game, Romancing Jan. So Romancing Jan, I just launched back in March. So Romancing Jan is an adjustment to a game that I created as a ballroom LARP. And when COVID hit, I decided to expand it into a letter writing game. And so there were a number of changes that I had to make to the design of that game to make it possible to play from a distance with people writing letters back and forth. And so I launched it in March. And I had to define some core aspects of Romancing Jan because I knew I was going to get a lot of feedback about what people enjoyed and what people didn't. And so at the core of my vision, I wanted to create a distanced community game that did not have technology as being the core gameplay aspect of it. I didn't want people logging into their computers daily to play this game. I wanted them to get a physical contact with other people in the world without being in person, right? So that was one of the main tenets of it. I didn't want it played online. I wanted to create a world that offered the romance of the past, but with the equality and diversity of marginalized voices. So I wanted that romance, but I didn't want it with all of the tragedy that we get, right, when we think about actual historical experiences for people who are marginalized, right, to include homosexual people, people of multiple races, right, and colonization was heavy at that time, made a huge impact on the way people could live. And so I wanted to create a world that would remove that and let us live that fantasy without the fear of that being constantly, those constant reminders, right? And then the third thing I wanted to do was create a sustainable business model that would pay my creators a fair and living wage. So these were my three tenets. So when I created the game and I launched it, we had some initial reactions to things, right? So for example, we had players who said, you know, we would really like to be able to at least out of game organize with each other on a Discord server. Can we do that? I thought about it and I said, well, I don't want to make an official Discord server because the point of this game was to get away from technology, right? I know how to make digital games. I've been doing it for 20 years, but this wasn't this specific product, right? So I said, that's fine, but it is also important. I understand the importance of building communities. So what I decided was the Discord server is that patio outside my tea shop. Right? It's not my tea shop. It's not what I'm actually creating, but it is that patio just outside it where those people can enjoy the thing that we're creating together, but isn't quite in my realm of control. So they can create Discord. And my only caveat was that any stuff that's actually going to be canon and actually go through is considered in-game has to come through letters. Otherwise, I won't know about it because I'm not on the Discord. I'm not listening. I don't know what's happening there. So the world can't change based on what's happening in that space. That's how I set up that boundary, right? We also had some folks come in and, you know, ask about how we've recreated the world and the history around the world. I had some people be like, well, I don't like that you changed this aspect of history or that aspect of history. This is not the way it really happened. And that upsets me. And I'm like, that's fine. But the core vision of what I created was creating a space where we could play in the fantasy of this world while still feeling equal to one another. And so if part of your desire to play pretend in this world is to experience racism and homophobia, this is not your cup of tea. It's not going to be your cup of tea. You're going to need to find a different game, right? I also wanted to make sure I created a sustainable business model. I got lots of comments, especially because this game is very similar to a live action role-playing game. And LARPs can be community-created experiences that tend to be pretty low in cost because they're community-created experiences. My experience has a bit of cost involved in it, right? This cost is based off of making sure that my writers get paid, my administrators get paid, all of the mail processing that happens to happen due to the way this game is played. The people doing that work are getting paid, and they're getting paid livable wages, right? I'm not paying below minimum wage. I actually pay all of my staff between $15 to $20 an hour. For some people, they're like, that is too much to pay people. I think about it as, I know plenty of game designers that get paid a lot more, right? They're still doing the work. I wanted to create a system where they would be paid fairly. So when a customer comes to me and says, I want you to lower your prices so that I can play this game, I get to look at my vision and say, that's not what I wanted to create. So in that case, I'm going to create a boundary there, and I'm going to say, nope, this can't go down past the point at which I can no longer pay my staff, because that was not the point of this product to begin with, right? And if you're wanting to play a free or low cost play-by-mail game, there are others out there that exist that could be played. This game might not be your cup of tea, right? And it's hard to do. I'm not saying that that's easy. It's really hard to turn away customers. As creators, we want everybody to love the thing that we made as much as we love it, right? But the truth is that not everybody is going to. And we all have our own opinions on different things as well, right? Some people love the way the latest Star Wars movies turned out. Some people hated it, right? But we don't go in and demand a remake of every movie that we disagree with the ending on, right? Sometimes we have to just accept that the creator was not in line. The creator's vision was not in line with what the product we wanted. So we need to find another product. Or if we're creators, create the product ourselves, right? That's the other option that we have as creators. So really, when it comes down to this, the whole point of this talk, just remember these three tenets of it, right? Define what is your core vision. Why did you build what you built? Hold on to that, right? Those three things, boil it down to three main things, put them up on your wall. And anytime you have a question about whether you should change something about your game based on player feedback, check it. Check against those three tenets. Does it change that? Then let it go. Let the player go. If it doesn't, or it's just a slight adjustment, then maybe it's worth it looking at, right? Maybe it's worth changing. But hold on to the vision of what you created, because only you can create that. That is the thing that you have to give to the world. And if everybody in the world doesn't love it, that's okay. You're never going to create anything that everybody in the world loves. Not even Apple can't do it. Amazon can't do it. So don't set yourselves up to do it either. All right. So who am I to talk about all this stuff? So I have spent 20 plus years in game development. I worked for a number of large companies on a number of large IP games. I've also worked for a number of startups that you will never have heard of. But here's some of the games that I worked on in the years. And I also am a founder of a few different companies. I founded and built a game pub called Adventure Pub until COVID closed us down, unfortunately. I am also founder of Enchantress Productions, LLC, which creates playable theater, and is also the producer of Romancing Jan, which is, you can find at romancingjan.com, and is online ongoing game. People can jump in or jump out whenever they wish. And I am currently co-founding Rainbow Unicorn Games with a good friend and former colleague of mine. And I'm a board member on the Playable Theater Project, which is a nonprofit group that is supporting other playable theater creators in the space. So those are the things that I do, and that is who I am. Oh, I also teach game design at Northeastern University. I do a lot. All right. Anybody have any questions for me or anything I can help you with in particular for these next 15 minutes? Hi, Patrice.
Hi. I was wondering, what if you have maybe an incomplete vision? Like there's some things that are very core, like I want to do something that is X, Y, and Z, but like maybe I'm not great at art and I don't know what it means to have my game's art reflect the experience, or like I don't know the intersection. Like how do you shore up your vision?
So I would say in that case, right, find some people in your community, other creators that maybe you've worked with in the past, right, that really align with your vision, right? I would put out maybe a put something on whatever social media, or if you're in part of community, some kind of community Discord or that type, say, I have this product. This is my core vision of that product. Is anybody else excited about this idea? If so, I would love to have some collaboration on really zeroing in on what does that look like. I love working in teams. Working in teams is core to a lot of what I do. Even when I created Romancing Jan and I thought about how we needed to expand the diversity of that world, I immediately went to some of my Black friends and actually said, hey, I saw your response to Bridgerton and how they created their history around that. Would you mind talking to me about it? And what are ways that I can make my game world more open and diverse? And I actually sat down with these friends of mine, these folks, and I ended up hiring a wonderful writer team that is almost all POCs to help me write the world, because these were things I couldn't fill in for myself, but they still stuck to my vision. So that's what I would say, is that explain your vision to some other people who might be in that realm of where you feel like you don't have the experience, and find those people who get excited about it. Hey, Brian.
Hear me?
Yep, I hear you now.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for the talk. It was actually super informative. And I feel like in the spirit of the talk, I should phrase my question with a caffeine metaphor. So, so let's say we live in a tea dominated world. Your business blew up. There's a store on every corner. Yeah. And I'm a tea drinker, but I want to introduce the world to my new thing. It's called coffee. And it's similar to tea in a lot of ways. You kind of drink it the same way, and it's both caffeine. And in some ways, it's better than tea. And, I don't know. For example, I feel like there's a lot more you can do with milk, with coffee, as opposed to tea, right? Yeah. My main concern, though, is that when people might, or inevitably will, use my product the way they're kind of used to using tea, sometimes you might get worse results, right? Yeah. I don't want to say worse, but an example that comes to mind is mint and tea is kind of like a staple, and not so much with coffee, right? So I guess my question is, when I'm as me marketing my product, right? How do I find a healthy balance between, hey, it's like tea, but different. Do I focus more on the similarities at the risk of being seen as lesser in some ways? Or do I just focus on my differences and just champion those? What's the better strategy there?
I would focus on your differences, right? Not in a way that detracts from the greatness that is tea. I think one of the things that we fall into the trap of often is trying to play the negative, right? I'm better than those people because XYZ. Well, the truth is, especially in the world of games, right? Gamers like all different types of games, right? I don't play, Stardew Valley because I hate BioShock, right?
Yeah.
I love them both for different reasons, right? I am a tea and a coffee drinker. I love them both for different reasons. So I would say really focus in on what is it that makes your product unique and different, and what's cool about that. And then find your people, right? Find those people who are like, oh gosh, yes, that's what I wanted, was a coffee experience. And then let them help you hype that, right? Start following them. Where do they hang out, right? Where are these coffee people hanging out? There's probably more coffee people in there, right? And then celebrate your difference, right? Celebrate what it is you have to offer.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anybody else with questions? Hey,
Hey.
Patrice.
I really love the conversation of like celebrating your differences and things like that. I think it's also super key to make sure that as creators, like we're not like sometimes I'll share some gameplay or something like that with like other developers, and you can tell there's like wait, why are you like, I would never be in this audience sort of thing. And I think it's really important to recognize that, like, you know, treat others artistic creations as even if they're not in your cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. So I think also that's a thing I love to say, right? Is that we also not just change the way you create, but change the way you consume and give feedback to other creators, right? Just because something isn't for you doesn't mean it's bad.
Absolutely.
Right? It just means it's not for me. I don't like first-person shooters. That doesn't mean first-person shooter games are terrible. Who would ever make them? Right? No, clearly people love first-person shooter games. I'm just not that audience. Right? So I think a lot of this is a matter of like, one, have respect for other creators when you see something and you're like, you know what? I'm not your audience, but you know what? I think I might know some people who could be. Right? Or okay, even if I don't know, have you found some people in that audience? That's awesome. How can I help you find more of those people? Right. I think in supporting our differences, right, that's also how we help the games industry as a whole become more interesting. Right. Like, and it helps us come up with brand new ideas that like we never would have thought of. Right. Who would have expected like Minecraft or Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing, right, to become huge? If I had based off my knowledge off of some of the like games, advisors and stuff I got early in my career, they would have told me those all would have been flops. Nobody wants to play a farming sim, right? People like playing farming sims, turns out. Yeah, Tara. You want to walk right onto that little speaker before I can hear you. Yeah, there you go. And unmute.
There we go.
There
I
you
think
go.
I'm unmuted now. All right, great. Thanks for taking my question.
Oh, you're very, very quiet.
Oh, okay. I'll try to be closer here. Sorry, I'm
there
traveling.
you
are. Okay, great.
I see you, but I can't hear you. Do you want to type it?
Yeah, I'll type it.
Okay, so Tara says, how do you handle the squeaky wheels that are constant, loud, and also marginalized when they're all over social media? I mean, I think it's just a matter of you have to like, yeah, what do you do? I mean, the thing is that, right, when we use the term marginalized, that can mean a large group of people. I had a conversation recently when I tried to explain that part of my game was about lifting marginalized voices. And what I actually meant was lifting POC voices. And when I said marginalized instead, I had someone express that most of my game, right, most of my audience was marginalized. And that is true. If you consider homosexual people and women marginalized, which we are to a certain extent, but we are not POCs. Right. And so when we are talking about things like expressing voices of people whose nations would have been colonized, but we're giving them the ability to create a world in which they are equal, it isn't necessarily the white gay woman's voice that we need to hear, even though sometimes we do. And as a white gay woman, I like it when people hear my voice. But sometimes it's about lifting the voices of POCs that are otherwise. So I think, and then sometimes it's also a matter of you aren't doing it the way that, right, every marginalized individual, it's not like we go and we have a conference together and we say, how do we want to be represented today? Right? We all have different opinions on how we want to be represented in the world. And so what you might do to help some people that are in that same group might not agree with how you helped. And so you really, it's a hard place to be in, but you have to think about who is that core audience, right? Who is the audience that is being helped by the thing that you've created? And is that the audience that you're wanting to reach out to? And you can try to spread and you try to be as open as possible. But once again, it becomes a matter of you can't please everybody, right? So do the best you can. And then also, and right, go back to the squeaky wheels. And sometimes they are loud, but right, once it gets past your realm of control, social media is not all within our realm of control, but some of it is. If they're going directly to your site and they're being like, you know, particularly bad. I have an ad for Romancing Jan up on Facebook, and I've had a few people be like, this is idiotic, or, you know, this is stupid, or like, you know, kind of, you know, just, it isn't quite racist or sexist, but it's getting there. I can delete those, right? That's the power that I have within my own Facebook group. Right. But if they do it outside on their own pages or whatever, I don't have control over that. And I have to just let that go. Right. There's nothing you can do about that. People are going to say what they want to say. Right. But you can control it in your own space. And that's what I would say. Just focus on where you have that realm of control. Hope that helps. Got 4 more minutes. If anybody has like a last question. Otherwise, I don't know if the slides, I'll pop back one slide maybe. And then I do have my social medias up here. If anybody at any point wants to chat games, I love chatting games or tea, you know, whatever. My Twitter and LinkedIn profiles are at Athena Z Peters. You can pretty much find me in most places by my full name, Athena Z Peters. If you ever want to chat games, or, you know, or if you want a second eye on something that you're working on. I also work for Mobile Game Doctor, who does game consulting. So if you work for a company looking for consultants with experienced game developers, by all means, please look us up. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a fun rest of your conference.